Good morning and welcome to the African Utility Week studio. I'm Claire Falkfan, and with me this morning I have Nadya Bartol, who's the Vice President of Industry Affairs and a cybersecurity strategist. Now, Nadya, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know that you've just flown in from the States, and I appreciate you making the time to meet with us so early in the morning. We've spoken a couple of times previously around the importance of cybersecurity, and I know that it's something that in Europe and the US, utilities are definitely becoming more aware of. Can you give me some idea of why cybersecurity is going to become so important in Africa?
That's a great question. And thank you for having me here, by the way. I really appreciate it. So cybersecurity is important today globally because it is something that makes the systems that the world uses to support its infrastructure more secure. I used to work with somebody who would say, if there were no bad people in the world, we wouldn't need cybersecurity. It's just like locking the doors and doing the regular things we do in life to secure our homes and our businesses. We also need secure systems because people out there want to use them inappropriately. And systems are entirely pervasive in life. There is online banking, we all use internet, we use email, we use all kinds of social media. Utilities use systems as well, and they use them both for business functions like billing and management functions like human resources, as well as to run the power grid or for water, to run the water systems. So these systems, they run utility. And in the utility world, if somebody hacks into the systems that run the power grid, they can do real damage by interrupting the power supply, by making the power supply inconsistent, and creating business disruptions, or actually kill people if they really want to do something like that. The systems that run the power grid were not intended to be connected to the internet ever. The older systems of which there are so many out there. So nobody thought about securing them. The systems that have been internet facing for the last 10, 15, 20 years, IT-based systems, are much more, the companies who make them and put them together and use them are much more astute about security because they have been exposed. So in the last 5, maybe 7 to 5 to 3 years even, utilities started connecting their, and now you want to use this word carefully, the systems are now on the same infrastructure, the power systems and the business systems, and even if they're not on the same infrastructure, there's a connection somewhere, because the business side of utility needs the information provided by the power system in order to make all of those smart decisions about power use and a variety of things. It's not just for billing, it's so that we can have smart grids, smart cities, smart networks that make this world greener, better, and faster, and more operable. So these systems have to be connected, and then all of this old technology that was put together without the thought of how is it going to be misused by the threat from the internet is now somehow connected. Now, if it's connected well, it should be behind a whole bunch of, kind of like a castle with a moat and a little castle inside, and the guards with bows and arrows and the bridge and all of that stuff. But nevertheless, there's a way to get in.
Yeah.
And so it's important to secure that. Why is it so important in Africa? Is because Africa is building more power grid and electrifying more continent. The interesting thing is that Africa can learn from the errors that Europe and the United States have made. So this is a great opportunity to build it in now when the continent is rolling things out versus think about it later, which is much more expensive and not as good.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen some examples, for instance, with Stuxnet and the impact that it had, and there's been one or two other fairly well-publicized utility related, predominantly in the oil and gas field, but still utility-related incidents. So I guess to assume that the utility sector nowadays is free from hacking and from potential cyber threats is maybe a bit optimistic and idealistic. one of the challenges, of course, is that utilities are not traditionally IT based, as you said, and this is an operational business. And there's been a lot of talk around the integration of IT and OT. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that this is even a conversation that people need to have? What is the seemingly differences, if I can put it that way, between the two divisions, and why is it that there is sometimes a disconnect between how they operate and integrate with one another?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. First, I just want to note that while there haven't been publicized hacks of utilities, there's a number of reports that indicate that there is a malicious element that is mapping utilities networks, both in Europe and in the United States. These reports are more, people like me read them. They don't get out to the general public as much, although there are press articles, but nothing has happened yet, but there's certainly something going on, and it's been documented. Now, IT, OT is a great question. I can talk about it for hours, but I'll try not to do that. So as I said, these OT, the power systems, grew up running the power grid. And the priority for these systems, the utmost goal for these systems is to ensure reliable power supply and safety of the general public and the utility workers. IT systems are there to support business functions, and in terms of security of them, it's confidentiality of data that they carry, integrity of the data, and availability of the systems, and integrity of the systems as well. Over again, same thing over the last 7 to 5 to 3 years, the technology used on the OT side has predominantly become IT based. It's the same technology that has been used in the IT space. So I talked about the older systems that weren't meant to be secure. There are now the newer systems that are meant to be more secure. That's the good news. The bad news is that they're not sufficiently secure, and that the people deploying them don't necessarily know that they need to secure them. And the same security techniques that we use in the IT world need to be used very carefully in the OT world. For example, the common, if your computer is misbehaving, you reboot it, right?
Yes.
You can't reboot something that runs the power grid.
No, not easily.
Right. Well, it would have circumstances. It would have consequences. It could bring somebody's power down. Various things that are routinely used on the IT side, like malware inspection, intrusion detection systems, patching. How do you download all of the Patch Tuesday that Microsoft does, that my office laptop gets? Doesn't work as well. You must do it on the OT side, but it doesn't work as well, and you need to do various things like testing in an on-production environment and very carefully propagating the patches. The system is geographically distributed. Then the traffic that with the patches conflicts with the SCADA traffic. The system is there to run SCADA that runs electricity, and it goes on and on and on. Nevertheless, the technology is the same, and the skills are the same, and the priorities are different of the people working, the engineers and people working on the operations side and the IT side. And so the challenge is really no longer technical. It is cultural, and it is challenge of workforce. When there's two groups of practitioners that grow up with different goals, caring about different things, with different background and different approaches, then they have to work similarly but differently. It is hard to have them learn from each other. There's lots of IT. I have an IT past, so when people like me come in, we get the talking, if we're lucky, if we ask somebody, or we just get told when we talk about the stuff that we used to do. We get told that our priorities are different. It's reliability and safety, and then integrity and inavailability. This confidentiality stuff doesn't matter as much, and your techniques don't apply. It's really a cultural challenge.
But the thing is, obviously, privacy and confidentiality is going to become more important as utilities are adopting more smart technologies. Of course, privacy is one of the biggest concerns that consumers have. So how do you think you're able to to change that cultural fit, or do you think that this is a change that will occur as the technology develops and utilities become more digital?
It will occur by itself, but it's been pushed from multiple directions in the industry. There's multiple programs and attempts in the US utilities to cross-train people. They will take people out of IT into OT, out of OT into IT. They'll have them work together. They will collocate them. They'll put people in the same facility so that they can, go get the same coffee and talk about their kids. There is increasing number of training and some educational programs that kind of help explain these differences and these similarities. Technology is moving so fast that we need to make it happen rather than waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
And all at the same time, there's enough workforce that can do this. So as we bring new people into the workforce, specifically in the utilities, systems, and networks, we need to teach them the right things.
Now, when I saw you last year, you mentioned to me that there was something like 1 million cybersecurity jobs that were needing to be filled. Mm-hmm. How much of that relates to the utility sector?
We don't know. The number, I believe, comes from Cisco, from a survey that they did in 2014, and they projected that there's 1 million job shortage in the world globally.
Okay.
The US number, I think, is about 300,000. I understand there is a shortage of these folks in Africa and in Europe. It doesn't really matter where you are. So it's challenging, it's tricky, and we don't know what the proportion of the utility workforce is, but what I do know is that it's really easy to find a job, and there's lots of openings, and people are competing for the same resources. Different utilities are competing for the same resources.
So it's definitely something Africa needs to be factoring into its skills planning sooner rather than later.
Yes, okay. And again, if there is skilled people here who can help do it, as you are implementing these new portions of the grid, you will do so much better than we did, because we had to bolt it on in many places, and you can build it in.
Yeah, and I believe a system that's built with safety and security built into the system is obviously going to operate far more efficiently where it's tagged on at the end. Now, speaking about that, obviously one of the big drivers behind any sectors, especially one such as ours, is the need for regulation and for standards. What are your thoughts around Africa's need to develop standards? Do you think that individual standards per country or even continental standards are a necessity, or are there best practices that we could and should rather be taking from international standards and adapting a little bit?
Yeah. So that is another great question. There's thousands of pages written in a variety areas of cybersecurity for standardization. There is high-level standards, there is risk management standards, there is standards for industrial control systems, there is low-level detailed technical standards. There is more than enough standards out there. And I'm speaking as a standards developer because I do that. I sit on several committees, and actually I've written I've led the development of some of those standards. There is a lot of standards. They have good content. Most of these different, and they live in kind of different groups wrote different standards. Most of the standards in principle are about 70% the same. Even when you're talking about different industry, the application is different, but the high-level guidance is the same.
Okay.
And in standards, you can't write in any great level of detail. You can give general direction and general specification, because if you start being very, very specific, you're going to inevitably codify somebody's business practices and not somebody else's. So Africa can benefit again from being not the first mover, and pick up some global standards for general guidance, and maybe some more specific standards for more technical guidance, and then develop local variants, local implementation of these pieces of guidance. It takes such a long time to develop standards. It takes so many people and experts. There aren't enough of those experts in the world either. So the benefit is taking the material that's there and adjusting it to your needs versus reinventing something that has been reinvented several times already.
Yeah. Now, we had a chat yesterday with Corey Vermeulen, who is the Africa Director for the AUTC, and Um, yeah, what is AUTC and UTC going to be doing in terms of offering uh, just opportunities for utilities to become more aware of what's happening from a cybersecurity perspective? And would you like to just talk a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So, AUTC is going to be taking advantage of what we have done in other parts of the world. Of course, our conferences provide very robust cybersecurity content to the folks who come, but we also have a variety of products like white papers, like articles that we can offer globally. We do offer globally. We also do some things, especially in North America, that we can repackage and provide for other continents. We also have training programs, some of which are remotely available globally, and we can offer here. And we can help figure out locally what's needed and adjust what we do in the States and kind of help establish essentially peer-to-peer knowledge sharing. There's a lot of peer knowledge sharing that happens across North America and in Europe about very specific technical issues. I am sure folks in Africa could benefit from hearing these discussions or seeing the papers that result from these discussions, or establishing some sort of we're all connected now. We can do peer-to-peer relationships via some sort of protected social networking. So people in Africa will be able to ask questions, and then people all over the world can help answer them.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful.
Well, I guess that's part of the digital world, isn't it? Everybody's connected and everything is connected.
Yes.
Nadya, thank you for your time. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us in Cape Town. From the African Utility Week studio, I'm Claire Faulkvane. Thanks for watching.